Hi, I'm Ron,
I'm me.
and this is the Ron and Me Show, otherwise known as the Ron and Don Show. Thanks for joining us today.
Ron and Don, the abbreviations are R&D. We're not talking about R&D today. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, including repair and maintenance, R&M, Ron and me.
As Don so indirectly pointed out, we're going to today take a shallow dive in a deep pool called expenses, repair and maintenance versus capitalized. Basically, this is how your finance team treats an expense to the restaurant, and how it's worded, how it's logged, if you will, can make a big difference, and we're going to explore how and why.
The concept of R&M, repair and maintenance, is the idea of you are repairing something or you're replacing it in the short term or for short dollars. Generally for less than 3 years life, or generally as a result of it being less than $1,000 or $500, whatever your company has set. When you get into capitalizing something, those become really tight rules that were set up by the IRS and Sarbanes-Oxley, General Accounting Principles, all that kind of organizations. And there are gaps in there that allow the corporations to set their own rules underneath that, but there are overriding rules and they can't change them quickly or easily. You have a line generally to the end of the fiscal year that you're going to stay with that rule, and then if you change it, you're going to be with that line for a number of years afterwards. So the rules, the accounting department are not going to change very often. The reason why R&M is really a problem is that it hits that fiscal year or that accounting period as a full expense. The reason operations love capitalization is it spreads it over time and it doesn't hit their bonus all at one time.
So basically what you're talking about is a more expensive, if you will, usually well over $1,000 before something becomes capitalized. And in that scenario, they're able to depreciate that expense over a longer period of time because it's probably an item that has a longer life cycle to it. For example, let's drill in a little bit and talk about this. A convection oven, I think, is a great example of a capitalized expense that the life cycle, I would imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm imagining it's at least 5 years, probably closer to 10 years for a convection oven. How many? 7. I was close.
Oftentimes
okay.
it's 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so that being the case, rather than the books, if you will, the finances being hit with a one-time expense and left to deal with that in the one single year or period, that can be allocated over, in this case, a 7-year cycle, which makes it more of a palatable expense to the restaurant.
What happens here is you're going to have that asset for a long time, and you don't want it to negatively impact your profit statement that 1 year you bought it. So you're allowed to put it on the books. That becomes an asset within your corporation, which influences the net worth of the corporation as well, increases it, and will slowly decrease over time, which is called depreciation. And there's two kinds of depreciation.
There's in fact, the IRS has recently amended that law for certain larger purchases. You've got a straight line depreciation. The example we just gave a minute ago of the convection oven over a 7-year period would be a straight line depreciation. Recently, the IRS has also come out and said for certain items that meet a certain criteria, there's what they call an accelerated depreciation, which allows the buyer to expense something over a shorter period of time. And the value in that is that on the books over a larger period of time, for example, using the convection oven, they can benefit from that convection over a 7-year cycle, but they might expense it in 2 or 3 years under an accelerated depreciation model.
And it kind of depends on the finance department and how they want their reporting of their returns to the financial community to look. If they have a great year, they may want to convert to that, but it's over long term. They've got to do it for a number of years. You can't change your rules for just 1 year. It doesn't work out that way.
So, and I think it's important to remember here that when you're talking about purchasing something or expensing something in this case, as it's treated from an accounting perspective, the restaurant is benefiting from that purchase or that item being added. It could be restroom remodel, it could be a convection oven, it could be a new chef's counter. And in fact, we've seen recently where several restaurant organizations have started not expensing under repair and maintenance, but capitalizing certain things like, for example, back of the house regrouts. Because some of these newer grout products that are out are offering a 5 and in some cases 10-year warranty, and because accounting sees that as a long-term investment in asset, they are depreciating those over a longer period of time, i.e. capitalizing those.
So let's talk about how this actually works. We're going to buy that convection oven. Let's say it's a 7-year expected life from an accounting standpoint. So they'll take that, let's call it a $7,000 purchase, which includes purchase, installation, delivery, and removal of the old asset and disposal of it. All that can be capitalized, and let's say it adds up to exactly $7,000. They put it on the books, and it has a book value of $7,000. Each month, they knock down, was
1/12 of $1,000.
Well, yeah, 1/12 of $1,000, which was about, my math has gone out of my head.
It's smoke coming from your ears.
That'll come off each month, so at the end of 1 year, the remaining book value of that particular piece of equipment is now $6,000.
Now, let's talk about book value for just a minute, because that can work either for you or against you, depending on existing assets inside your restaurants. Let's take that convection oven. If that convection oven at the end of 7 years, this new convection oven, 7 years out, is still running along just fine, then that means in essence that restaurant from a financial perspective is getting free use of that convection oven for the years that follow. On the flip side of that, if that convection oven fails at 4 years and has been depreciated over a 7-year cycle, then you now have to add a new convection oven and take the remaining depreciation from the old asset, even if it's not in use anymore. So we see that a lot with, I think, carpet and booths and things like that, where restaurant brands can decide that they want to do decor changes, design changes, things like that, and they've still got asset value for some of their components that are being replaced.
Let's go back to our convection oven for a second. At 4 years, you've got $3,000 left on the books. You're going to buy a new convection oven, let's say for $7,000. Got lucky, price didn't go up. You're going to put a new convection oven on the books for $7,000 and depreciate it $1,000 a year. Immediately hitting the R&M page or the expense page for that restaurant and or location will be a $3,000 hit. You got $4,000 you've depreciated off, so you're down to, so whatever is left on that book value immediately hits that restaurant, which goes against the bonus of that management
That's
fee.
the residual value of the first piece of equipment.
Since it's no longer there, you can't have it on the books as an asset you still own. It's gone. So it has to be completely written off, and it goes against expenses, and that's where it gets a little ouchy for operations. And we're going to get into another time possibly talking about repair versus replacement. But that book value is going to be critical in some of those decisions that you'll get to. The other side of this is, let's say that you have a piece of equipment, and one of my favorite ones is the water heater.
Oh yeah.
For years, they would last 7, 8, 9, 10 years in a restaurant. They were heavy, they were built a little stronger and all that. But with all the new high efficiency regulations and everything else, the walls of the heat exchangers are a lot thinner, a lot lighter, so they have better exchange of therms between the surfaces, and they don't last as long. Instead of having a depreciation life of 5 to 7 years, their real useful life is more like 3 to 5 years. And yet we're still depreciating out. So when the water heater dies, they're having to write them off. Here's where you have to be in contact with your friend in finance and say, we need to reschedule this next fiscal year for 3 to 5 year depreciation rather than the 5 or to 7 year depreciation, whatever you're doing. that takes advanced conversations with finance on that particular topic, because they can't change it in the middle of the year, and they'll probably start talking about it not until the start of your third or fourth quarter, what you're going to have for your accounting useful life of that piece of equipment or that asset.
So again, we're talking about the potential for a deficit value on an asset that is no longer in service. And that's where the facility manager can, working through the friends in finance, have some influence that can help the restaurant operations team avoid that big hit that can invariably hit probably at a time when they're working towards bonus and things like that. So
another situation that is a different category of how you can work with your friends in finance is there are times you have major expenditures to repair or work on very expensive assets, possibly custom built assets. And I'll give you an example of one of mine. I've replaced a lot of custom built chef's counters in restaurants in the past, and they range anywhere from $75,000 to $130,000 every time I do it. If I can find a way to take a perfectly good cabinet and all the items are in the right place for the operations, for the cook line behind it, they don't have cross patterns, and I don't have a problem with cleanliness problems, I can get underneath it to clean it, and all the other things being equal, if I can not spend that $75,000 to $125,000 to replace it, but I can put in more efficient and better refrigeration system, replace the drawers with more sturdy and stronger drawers, I have enhanced the quality beyond what was originally specified for that piece of equipment. Even though it's completely written off the books as zero book value, I've also extended its useful life. Those are two terms you want to remember. Enhanced beyond what it was originally designed to do and extended its useful life. They can then capitalize those changes to that unit. And on that particular one, I've done it for 5 years. Well, 5 years on a $12,000 to $20,000 expenditure is a lot less on an annual basis than 10 years on $100,000. I think you can see, and suddenly your depreciation schedule, which hits the bonus also, is in the benefit of operations as well and the company as a whole.
So there you have it. We're not trying to turn anybody into a CPA, but at the end of the day, understanding the effect of each R&M and capitalized expenses onto the restaurant and how you can work within those parameters can really make a difference for the restaurant. Where do they find us, Don?
Somewhere about right there.